It's I just so next slide. So as you are all aware of that, what I'm working on is only there's a tons of data on women's participation, but what I'm trying to do is to understand from the very specific level from below. Trying to understand these phenomenon from a very micro perspective. So, like I have here, throughout the course of history, we've had different groups being incorporated into the political structure. I mean, I can't even go into the debate right now. So I'll just like run through what I have. So in the political context, we've seen that women's lack of inclusion is actually global. Although there have been kind of changes in recent times, but it's still there. And the debates have also shifted into from the city representation, we have numbers, how many women are there, to the impact of this representation. It could be more, but that's just so I can just touch down. Can you please move to the next slide? So even though some indicators for measuring gender equality are improving, for example, we have this now. We talked about early marriage, it's actually reducing. Female gender is actually reducing. But then this very question of inclusion in the political sphere, because due to power, we still have a lot of issues. So yeah, that is what I've actually mentioned there. So we now have a difference between practical needs and strategic needs. Now, we focus on practical needs, healthcare, and employment, a lot of those things. But the issue has always remained that she needs to articulate these things. And when I get to my theory, to be clearer. So, yeah, women actually participate in politics. So there's been a kind of paradox. This is participation, we have women there. But the actual representation, that's what that issue. So from the spectatorial level, you have about 50. Ascribing to that, then there are issues. So reasons for why we still continue to eat the nail in the head. Can you please proceed? I'm struggling to achieve. So statement of the problem: the politics of gender representation has grown to assume a mainstream discourse without science. So no one can say this is me. Can't believe. So yet every election cycle continues to provide new insights. So this is where my work is coming from. So when we have a round of election, can we just say because okay, this society is overflow and not study? We should still study and see what ideas are emerging and how can we explain certain things. So this study discussed a micro level dimension of women's participation in Nigeria's election. So I tried to understand, like I said, that through a very small case study. And although I didn't go to it, because it's for this study, it's not a representative one. Can you please proceed? Yeah, this again, it offers an analysis of the contribution of women towards electoral successes. They are instrumental to this. At what level? They are very instrumental to this of their political parties. Why they have never really had full opportunities to contest as candidates, because at the end of the day, it's always the easy to micromanage the political parties. And this comes from our empirical data. So, so now my questions, which I actually draw from the product study, this will address what I want to talk about. How do political parties engage women to mobilize for votes? The other one, are women a specific target of electoral mobilization? The answer later. Now, are women vulnerable to certain kinds of material gifting? Because there's this debate also around vote buying, and people are contesting, can there be vote buying actually? That's why we feel that, or we believe that vote buying is not really possible. Because I can remake, you can give me the one I say I'm not ready for you. It depends on how you want to, and you might not be able to. It's different for me. Holding my money and all this something. So I have chosen to use my words carefully. I said gifting. If you're not ready to book it, fine. But gifting, not vote buying. So now my theoretical framework. I go back to Anne Phillips' theory of politics of presence, 1995. So before this, there's the politics of representation, which says that women don't have to be there. And it doesn't mean that their interests are not represented. They have fathers, they have uncles, they have brothers, and maybe those might be able to actually represent their interests. But this is saying no, they have to be there because they are the ones that actually influence many of these issues, and they will be able to amplify it more for clarity. So this is also a legitimate concern for democracy because it talks about representation. So we cannot gloss over, and the debate has even been expanded now. We talk about youth and inclusion of disabled and all of this. But I'm still on women, and that's actually difficult because as a man, I'm trying to understand from my perspective. So yeah, can you see? Okay, yeah, I'll just do this in fast here. It's a methodology, it's explanatory, it can't be exploratory. People have to it, it's explanatory. Study area, it carried to local governments. Yeah. So I decided to choose after studying this data. You see that Lagos is actually highest. But why Ekiti? It's because of the steady growth. That's why I decided to choose because of the steady growth. Now, the representation peaked in Lagos in 2011, and now it's kind of dropping, but it is rising. So I felt that would be, but I didn't it's proposing. That was the reason why I chose this. So this is the study area from Nigeria to Ekiti, and Sarah here from the specific map here. So because I did observation, I don't want to say ethnography, I'm not a sociologist. I don't want to appropriate statements, but I'm trained by some of them. So I did some elements of observation. So I'm somewhere there when I was actually doing the arrow did not let us support. This is actually the outlook of where I studied. I was somewhere around the police station 2. It's not a customary box. So it gave me the opportunity to actually observe over time. 2023 2 elections. So all the eligible voters actually were given inclusion criteria. So if you are voting, then I could answer this. So yeah, it was for about 6 weeks period that I conducted the study. And this is a kind of output to the people I interviewed, particularly market managers. So you can and continue. So yeah, something like it, proposing something I mentioned it earlier, so you can proceed now. So instruments, I think it's also clear, semi-structured interview, method key informants, no part observation, and the analysis was schematic. So my friend is now so. So women as mobilizers. So we have this in the executive committee, we have a women's leader. And although she has the title, she's part of the executive members, but largely responsibilities are relegated to just mobilizing. They want to capture that group of people. And why that is so, still a subject of continuous debate. So the responsibilities are largely concerned with galvanizing women's support and guaranteeing their unwavering loyalty. Because this is I will talk about that in a jiffy. It's a big demographic half of it, so it can't be ignored. So a smart politician will actually check if they are on the side or not, because that will actually amount to a political society if we decide to ignore them. So in the first election, it was also that women's capacity to mobilize candidates is highly exploited. So during my observations, I was at the secretariat. That was an eve of the election. I saw so many things, and I proceeded to the polling unit on the day of the election to continue to observe things. So several women and men as well were providing logistics. They were sharing stuff. I will get there soon. So during my observation of a specific party secretariat, something. Okay, I mentioned this. So I mentioned logistics. On the day of election, I mentioned this as well. Okay, you can continue. So yeah, interviews. Now I did mention that they mobilize, but how can they become candidates? Interestingly, at the very local level, they don't discuss issues of candidacy here. So anybody who wants to become a candidate, the discourse is taken to the state level. So at the end of the day, you really don't know. So for women, most of the time, it's always they emerge as a lot of imposition, especially at that level. I don't know at the state level. At local government level, they debate it at the top and they come and say you have the nice lady who want to use. And there's a way they actually appeal to other person, let this one do it. That is what happens. That's very left to them. So many of the things we discuss, we have reports. When it comes to candidates, it's at the state level. Okay, so women as a specific target group. Yeah, I need to say something earlier. There's been scholars who have said that women vote more than men, but then from what I observe, I have decided to be careful. I would say that they vote as much as men. I don't have statistics to say it doesn't. The INEC data doesn't capture that.
You have 2 minutes more.
2 minutes more. The INEC data doesn't capture that. So I would say that women and men vote as much as they could, but I do not know which one is right. So because of my time, vulnerability of women to material gifting. Now we've seen the money aspect, but I saw more. So I now needed to query why distribution of liquid soap, salt, tomato paste, rice, beans, and all of those things. So I could infer that women bear the greater part of the burden of reproductive labor, apart from giving birth now. They continue to do much more. Childbearing, raising, this includes domestic activity and all of those. So all of this is that they actually distribute is very, very needed for women. And in a way, it serves as kind of a magnetic pull too, to actually drag them, especially in the kind of economic situation where many of these things are actually needed, even survive. So they come and this actually attracts them to the kind of party that we want to actually appropriate their vote to win the election. So yeah, that's basically good. I'm sorry because of the time, I just needed to rush through. So the limitation of my study, access to, because it's an analytic study now, it's always difficult to actually access those big positions, especially whenever they feel that they don't need it. So that's one. And like I said, it's the micro level of descriptive analysis. So I do not intend to actually use it to analyze, but in a way, it's actually good for us to actually study something small. Perhaps that can inform how we understand something bigger. So I think by now I should be concluding. So yeah, whereas some of these findings about women political participation could be seen as given. The qualitative analysis of women's political recruitment as articulated in this study provides more nuance, and that was actually the essence of my study, to see what I can actually understand differently from that very local vantage. So that's about the study. So the feedback experience, this was me with the allergen, and that's all.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's put our hands together for Mr. Adedejadewale. You can please put down your questions. We're going to be asking questions later. So for the next presenter, we're having what's his name? Alice Kang from University of Navaseka. Okay. Are you there?
Hi, I'm here. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, please. You have just 12 minutes.
Great.
Thank you.
I'm going to share my screen. Just give 1 second here. Just gonna. Can you see my slides okay?
Yes, you can go ahead.
Great. Okay, let me close this up. So this is a project that I'm presenting with Dr. Adebusola Okadele. Neither of us were able to come out to the meeting, but we're grateful that you are with us. And this is definitely a work in progress. So we would really appreciate your feedback and questions. This project is about gender quotas. So probably everyone in the audience knows that gender quotas are proactive policies to help more women enter into elective or appointive office. And some of the earliest ones were adopted in Sudan and Egypt. Many countries in West Africa have adopted them. Not yet Nigeria, so we're going to be talking about that in a second. But the way that Busola and I want to think about gender quotas is who supports them and why. And a lot of research has been done on adults. And in adult literature, they find that in general, women tend to be more supportive of gender quotas than men. And in many cases in Africa, it's often the men who are leading opposition to gender quotas, like criticizing them or refusing to adopt them. What we want to contribute to this scholarship is an analysis of children. And why study children? Well, children from a very early age start to develop norms of fairness and equality. As early as age 2, a baby can notice if another human is suffering. There have been studies done of children 3 to 8 years old about whether they notice if they have more than other children, and then whether they want to share what they have with those who have less resources. But nobody has studied children's understanding of political inequality, and more specifically, gender quotas. And what we're going to do is focus on boys, the ways that support gender quotas and why they might do so. So we think, based on the literature in political and social psychology, that children and boys might support gender quotas for 2 types of reasons. The first is moral. They might think that the exclusion of women from political office is bad and not fair. And they might support measures that address these inequalities. On the other hand, boys and also girls could draw in stereotypical thinking. So they might say, well, we need to have women in office because women are more caring, they're nurturing. Some might say that we need quotas because women are too weak to run and they need help. So we're going to look at this in a second. But first, how did we study children and boys in the context and where? So this research was conducted in the 3 senatorial districts of Ogun State. We surveyed 981 children in 12 schools, and this was before the general elections in 2023. And here's a photo of Abeokuta. In the survey, we asked children to read this prompt. So I'll just read it aloud. The prompt says, for a long time in many countries, only men were elected to government. Some countries changed their laws so that some of the offices are reserved for women. Do you think saving some offices for women is a good idea or a bad idea? So the way we didn't use the word gender quota because we didn't assume children would know what gender quotas are. But when we tested this language out, children seemed to understand what was happening here. And then second, we also asked about a different type of quota, which is quotas for school clubs. We were interested to see if children would change their responses if the quotas were closer to home. And so this question asks about schools where clubs have 3 leaders. Some students wanted to change the rules so that at least one of the leaders would always be a girl. The way we analyze the data is we're going to look at some numbers here, whether boys and girls respond differently. And then we're going to use thematic qualitative analysis to look at the rationales that boys use. So after each of those questions, we asked the boys and girls to explain why they gave the answer they gave. So we found that there is a gender gap. This shows the percentage of children divided by boys and girls and their responses. So here you'll see that just looking at bad ideas, who's saying this is a bad idea. About 15% of boys say that quotas for elected office is a bad idea, compared to 12% of girls. And then in clubs, it goes up for both groups. So 21% of boys say club quotas is a bad idea versus 16% of girls. And in regression analysis, we find that this difference is significant. This is not a random difference between boys and girls. But at the same time, what we think people should pay attention to is that the majority of boys actually thought quotas were a good idea. And so, 74% of boys thought that quotas for government positions was a good idea. And even closer to home, in their daily lives, 69% of boys thought that club quotas were a good idea. Now, we're going to talk about the reasons boys as to why it's a good idea to do something that would basically undermine their political dominance, the political dominance of men. And right now, this is not final. Right now, we think there are 4 general reasons that boys are bringing up, and there is overlap. The first, see. And then because of time, I won't go through it super detailed, but let's go through each of those circles. So the first circle is moral reasoning. And we saw that boys thought that gender quotas for office were good because offices should not only be for men, because women should be treated fairly. We should give women a chance to lead. And some mentioned, they're human like us. For the school clubs, boys similarly said, boys cannot be the only ones to lead. A girl is supposed to lead too. Not only boys have the right, the girls will think only boys deserve everything. And you'll see that we just copy and pasted the boys' responses. We didn't correct for spelling and grammar. Some boys drew on stereotypes. So like positive stereotypes about women. So some boys said quotas are a good idea because women are brave, respectful, responsible. Some work harder than men. This one boy said women feel for others more than men do. Women are like mothers. So for the elected office positions, some boys talked about women being their moms or mothers. For school clubs, girls are smart. So they're wise, intelligent, and have quick thinking. So the third circle that we had, or third theme we saw, was about competence. So for quotas for office are a good idea because women can do what men can do. This is a common, they're drawing on a common refrain that what men can do, women can do better. And some just say because women are capable. And similarly for school clubs, they talk about students being a good student, capable, having good ideas. Now, this slide is a little bit more complicated. There was one theme that showed up only for one of the offices. So for elected office, some boys said that we should have quotas because politicians are bad, and specifically perhaps male politicians are bad. These are the ones that talk about corruption. So they said, if we have more women in office, there will not be corruption. And they complain about how some male government officials use money for bad things instead of good things. A third boy said she would not cheat on the people. She is ruling. And another said that most male government officials do very bad and they make the economy very bad. In contrast, for the school clubs, the boys actually brought in this idea of representation, which is what the previous speaker talked about. So they said that the knowledge of boys is not the same as the girls. So women should be girls should be among the leaders. And another thought that boys will do what they want to do for boys and do good things for boys, but they're not going to do what the girls like. And so that's why there must be a girl. Some boys use that language of a girl will stand for girls. This is basically, the theoretical concept of substantive representation, which we didn't anticipate seeing, but we did. So conclusions. We framed the wording of our question might have encouraged both boys and girls to be positive because girls and boys, they don't like inequalities that are structural or that seem systematic. So in this scenario, the boys are more likely to oppose gender quotas than girls. We already know this from studies of adults. What we think needs to be emphasized is that boys can support gender quotas. Boys are not born being opposed to them. So something happens in perhaps adulthood or later adolescence that might make them oppose gender quotas. And then we were interested in the reasons why they support gender quotas. They don't think exclusion is fair. They think women can be capable. They think there are big problems in the country that need fixing. And they think that in maybe perhaps more democratic or fair conditions, women can represent girls' interests, or girls can represent. So if you have any questions, please contact us, and we look forward to hearing your suggestions and feedback. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alice. So please just note your question. After the whole presentation, you'll be asking questions. Please note your question. So for the third person, we'll be having Mary Adetula from Obafemi Awolowo University. You have just 12 minutes to do that. Now, let me go out. Okay, that's the next slide. So, good day, everybody. I just want to so that, and the title of my paper is "There's More to It Than a High." Women party leaders and political inclusion in electoral party and electoral politics. So before I start, I would like to say what academics related for this topic. When I started my master's and I was looking for what can I do research, and I asked to start brainstorming that what topic can I research? And a friend sent me a small news, and in that news they put something there, and that news was like in the of Southwest. There was women representative in all the state house of assembly except Osun State. So I was now wondering that, okay, why is it that Osun does not have a representative? As at last election, they had somebody there, but now there was nobody. So this curiosity made me to want to look into this research that is, okay, if in every political party there's always women leaders, and what are the functions of these women leaders? Because it is believed that women leaders are there to at least project the voice of women within the parties. So I wanted to check, okay, what are their roles? And apart from what are their roles, you see that are there some challenges they face that does not allow them to include women into parties? And is there also any local national dynamics that affect them? Next slide, sir. Objectives. I'm making the objectives. So, like I said, what's the next? So, the goals. That's what are the goals they do. Like, what are the things that these women leaders carry out in society, and what are the challenges they face within the political parties, and also what are the impact of the national local dynamics upon them. So, on the theory I use in adopting this next slide. The theory I use in adopting this paper, I use structural functionalism. Structural functionalism is of the sense that that every institution has the structures, and those structures have some functions. So linking it to my paper in the sense that, okay, when this women they are part of the structure in the political parties. So that means they must have a function they are doing. And what are the challenges in those functions? What are things when somebody is undergoing some particular task or duties, it is wrong for that person to have some particular challenges, to go through some certain issues or challenges that he or she is going to. So what are those challenges that does not allow them to carry out their function the way it's supposed to be? And that was why I adopted structural functionalism for this research. Next slide. So the methodology, I use explorative approach. And the reason why I use explorative approach is that because this is a research that you will need to go and interview the women leaders to be able to get their own perspectives of what they view and what they are facing through in the political parties. And one of the things I did was that not just to be looking biased, I also interviewed the male side. So I got the female perspective and also the male perspectives of the challenges they face through. So I chose 4 political parties in Osun State. That's PDP, APC, ADP, and Accord Party. And in each of those parties, I interviewed 2 of their party leaders at the state level to be able to get their response, to get their feedback on what they are going through in that party. And apart from that, I also analyzed some journal articles, some government reports, and some other things to be able to get more. Next slide. So this actually shows a graphical representation of the distribution of women leaders across those sample parties I did. So the blue actually represents the state level. You can see ADP has like 5. It's the highest that has the highest number of women leaders within that party when it comes to their state level. Because then at the Ife Central is just like, I use this to represent the zone, the 3 senatorial districts. That's the Osun East, Osun West, and Osun North. So those are what I used to represent. So ADP has more women leaders represented in their state level, while Accord has few. And I think Accord and PDP have equal representation when it comes to the state level. But APC, it is general throughout the whole level. That is, the numbers of people you find in the state is also the numbers of people you will find at the zonal level for both things. So next slide. So my major findings, what I found from this research is that number 1, the roles that women leaders had. One of the first things why interviewing them is that one of the first things they do is to oversee the women activities within the party. It is their responsibility as women leaders to make sure that the women within the party are being coordinated, are being managed. So they manage women within the party. And apart from that, when I interviewed them, they said they also receive direction from their party leaders. So whatever the party leader tells them to do, that's what they are going to do. The party leader tell them, okay, we need to mobilize like 200 women for a particular campaign. They are the ones to go about to start contacting other women leaders at the zonal level to start mobilizing their women in those places so as to bring them. So another thing is that they educate women. They also sometimes conduct some symposium for women. So they educate women on some other things. But they educate women. So they also educate women within the political parties. And they also ensure women inclusion in political position. That is, so that shows that women leaders actually try to push out women to come into elective positions. So they make effort to push out women to come into politics, and they mobilize women and also do some campaign activity. So this post of this shows that yes, women leaders are actually making effort to bring out women out. But the next question is, what are these challenges? Why is that these challenges is so persistent? What is actually serving as a challenge to them that is not making this improvement? And that can be seen in the next slide. And the next slide shows the people I interviewed. I interviewed the male perspective and the female perspective. So the male perspective explained the women leader challenges in the sense that when it comes to issues of self-confidence, that is, women don't have self-confidence. They are not bold enough to say that, okay, this is what they want for themselves. This is how they want to go for themselves. And this is one of the reasons why most of the women leaders are not self-confident to be able to push out, maybe at first when they are trying to push it out and they didn't welcome it and they stop at that level, they don't push. So you understand? How many minutes? So they also talked about gender solidarity. So one thing I noticed about the male and female perspective is that both of them mentioned gender solidarity in the sense that women do not support women. They don't support women. Even the female perspective also mentioned women that one of the issues, the most important issues they have is that they don't find women supporting. They rather align themselves with men, that they don't align themselves with their female folk. And that is one of the reasons why this has been an issue, a challenge to them. And another thing too, I discovered, women do not like taking this. A man can decide to spend his whole 1 year salary just to go for politics, but women will not want to waste her money on something that she's not sure that it will bring out something back for her. So those are the things that are the key issues and things that I found in doing the whole research. And also family connections too. How connected you are as a woman. If you have an uncle in a high position, it's very easy for you to get that position. So those are the things that I saw. Next slide, please. So the root causes that I saw, what are the causes? The root causes, number one, within the party, there are caucus loyalty. That is, in political parties, they have their caucus, and whosoever the party says will be the person is who the whole party will support. So, and there's also competition complex. Even within the women leaders, one of the respondents told me that even the women leaders want to get to higher position too. So they will not want to promote younger women like them, so that they'll be higher than them. So, and because the natural factors, one thing I discovered is that there's a disconnect between theory and practice. Political parties have 35% affirmative, but it is not being implemented. It's just there for their sake. Then finally, conclusion. So conclusion, it was discovered that most of the problems or challenges that these women leaders face are mostly political factors rather than social and economic factors. And the most pronounced is that women do not support themselves. So my recommendation for this paper is that maybe there should be a symposium or a gathering for women to come together and see a way of associating themselves to come and fight for themselves together. Because it's only when an house is strong, that is when it can go out to fight. Thank you.
Let's put our hands together for Mary Adetula. So the first presenter, Isheoluwa Olayinka from Taye Sholari University of Education. Is he or she online?
Yeah, she is.
Okay. So you can go ahead. Isheoluwa Olayinka.
Not online.
He's not online. Okay, so
She's muted. She's muted.
okay. If somebody can send that message, then okay, then let me do my presentation. I'm the last person on the next page. Last page. Okay, since the Isheoluwa Olayinka is not online, I'll do my own presentation. So by the time I finish, you should come back online. So hello, so can you?
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, so Isheoluwa is not online. You can send a message, then let me do my presentation. And probably before I finish, she's going to join us. So please let me share my slide. Hello. Let me share my slide. Yeah, this one. Okay, so thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you to this section once again. So the title of Remila Kosarumi from Lee City University, Ibadan. And the title of my paper presentation is E-Governance in Nigerian Public Sector, a quantitative exploration of challenges, opportunities, and prospects. So you can move to the next line. The next line, look at the outline, then a brief introduction. So what is e-governance? Before I begin to go into e-governance, what is e-governance? E-governance simply means the use of ICT to do what? To improve public service delivery. So, and we know that in this era of digital transformation, e-governance has emerged as a very crucial tool or instrument for enhancing efficiency, transparency, and responsiveness of public administration. And in Nigeria, the adoption of e-governance within the public sector represents a strategic approach to address long-standing challenges, which is related to bureaucratic inefficiency, corruption, limited access to public services. So as the nation continues to embrace digital tools and platforms, understanding the different dynamics of e-governance, e-governance have become an essential tool for driving or achieving sustainable development and good governance in Nigeria. E-governance in Nigerian public sector has the potential to transform the way government services are delivered and making them more efficient, transparent, and accessible to citizens. Please, you can move the slide. So this study presents a qualitative exploration of the current state of e-governance in Nigerian public sector with the focus of identifying the key challenges which is affecting the full implementation of e-government, achieving the effective service delivery in Nigeria. So what are the goals and objectives of the study? Please move. The goals of the study. What are the goals of the study? Number one is to assess the current level of e-governance implementation within Nigerian public sector using quantitative data. The second one is to identify the major challenges that hinder effective adoption and execution of e-governance initiative in Nigeria. While the third one is to explore the opportunities and benefits that e-governance presents for enhancing transparency, accountability, and efficiency in the public service delivery. Another one is to be able to provide data-driven recommendation for improving the design, implementation, and sustainability of e-governance strategy in Nigeria. While the last one is to examine the prospects and potential impacts of expanding e-governance on governance quality and citizen engagement. So for easy and more comprehensive understanding of this study adopted the technology acceptance model. And this model was actually designed by Fred David in 1986. Yes, and this particular theory looked at e-governance from two different dimensions, both from the psychological and information system. So there are two different things this theory looked at. It looked at the passive usefulness and the passive ease of use. So looking at it from the passive usefulness, that it looks at it from the degree to which a person believes or a person is able to accept technology, and the passive ease of use, how technology has been able to ease the use of work, and also to be able to improve effective service delivery. So let me quickly just dive into the relevance of this theory. The relevance of this theory to e-governance, to the use of ICT or adoption of ICT or e-governance in the public sector. So understanding, one of it is, which I said, understanding user behavior, which is one that is, sorry, we can move to the next slide. No, not there. You're moving very fast. So relevance of technology acceptance model. So the first one is understanding the user behavior. Some help government agency analyze how public servants and citizens perceive the usefulness and ease of use of e-governance platform. That is, example is the payment of tax, renewal of your documents, licenses, and things like that. So another one is identifying adoption barrier. It helps you to identify adoption barrier like what? Through term, the Nigerian government can identify why civil servants resist using certain digital tools. What makes e-service difficult to, or either is intimidating or difficult for users to use. How training, awareness, and system redesign can be improved or acceptance. So another one is what? You can move to the next line. Improving policy and implementation. So it helps to improve what? Policy and implementation by focusing on passive usefulness and ease of use of people or citizens, user-centered system design, and things like that. Another point is encouraging stakeholders, engaging the Nigerian contents whereby technology infrastructures may be uneven and trust in government systems varies based on, or what this is simply saying is that how this it enables us to be able to know if really if government is able to provide this technology and so for citizens to be able to use. Also, with measuring employee readiness, if really these employees are really ready for this technology. Evaluating citizen feedback, it enables government to know either maybe the citizens are able to what are actually adopting this particular model to ease job, evaluate citizen feedback, and so increase engagement and satisfaction through improved citizen usability. So another point is monitoring and evaluation, which I've explained earlier on. So let's move to the methodology. This study adopts the quantitative research approach based on the topic. So a survey was conducted to collect data from a sample of citizens, which are government officials and other stakeholders. And also we have a random sample technique was used to select participants from each survey. A sample size was determined based on the research objective and desired level of perception. So let us move. Also, empirical review for easy and more comprehensive understanding of the study. So they actually review some empirical study to look at the nexus that exists between the findings of this study and other previous studies. So discussion and findings. So firstly, the result shows that inadequate infrastructure, limited ICT knowledge, and corruption are significant challenges hindering the implementation of e-governance initiative. Another finding shows that the study also identified opportunities for e-governance to improve transparency, enhance service delivery, and increase citizen participation. So in conclusion, the study on e-governance, or the study on e-governance in Nigerian public sector highlights the potential of digital technology to transform government operation and service delivery. And why challenges such as inadequate infrastructures and limited ICT knowledge exist, the opportunities for improved transparency, efficiency, and citizen participation are significant. So by addressing these challenges and leveraging on the opportunities, Nigeria can promote better government and improve the life of its citizens by adopting e-governance or new trending ICT. We know about AI into what? Improving what? Public service. So recommendation based on the conclusion and findings, this study made some recommendation for both policymakers and so on to promote for, let me say, policymakers and so on, for students and so on. But one of the recommendations is that government should, for policymakers, should invest on ICT infrastructures. Also, capacity building should, promote transparency and accountability, and also government should enable the let me say capacity building and in terms of training. And so most of these government agents, even though we feel that everybody can now use, when we talk about ICT, it has to do with the use of technology and so on. Not all of them can still use it. So government should organize training programs and things like that to be able to improve service delivery. So thank you. You can move to the last slide. Thank you. Thank you. So please, if you have questions, please, questions. So contribution. Okay. Please, before we move to question, the last presenter, the lady before me, is she ready? Is she still there?
I'm ready. I'm here.
Ishelua from Taye Sholari University. So please, you can jot down your... Yeah, good afternoon, please. Is that Ishelua?
Am I next to present? Yes. I'm sorry,
okay,
I joined
please,
it.
No problem, please. You have just 12 minutes, please.
12 minutes?
Please. Yeah, your time.
So can I present now?
Yes.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm sorry I couldn't share my slide because the paper was also accepted for a conference in South Korea next month, the IPSA conference. So I don't want to violate the get fund requirement to get funding for the conference. So, the idea behind this paper is the fact that existing and previous literatures has examined concepts like factors like communication, stakeholders engagement, and viability of state institutions. Sorry, the title of the paper is sociocultural norms and public policy effectiveness. And I'm trying to examine how we can use Yoruba aphorisms, the ones we refer to as Owe, as a mechanism for trying to mitigate against climate change in Southwest Nigeria. So as I've said before, the idea behind this concept is, over the years, public policy experts has repeatedly considered factors like communication gap, stakeholders engagement, leadership factor are some of those factors that restrain the efficacy of public policy. And oftentimes we try to undermine one fundamental factor, which is our sociocultural norms and values, and this dwells with us in every day of our lives, because we so much believe in our culture and some of those things we get to know while growing up. A very practical example which I have that experience while growing up was when me, myself, and my friend do go out for probably event or we have a mission to achieve. Whenever one of us struck our leg on a stone, especially when it's the left leg, the person will believe like that might not end well for us, and then before we know, we'll be using our left hand again to rebuke such a thing. That tells us how far we so much believe in some norms and values that we grown up with. So now the question is not like how do we tend to now use this as a mechanism for us to ensure public policy effectiveness? And before we know, even in literatures, there are literatures that establish that sociocultural norms to influence our behavior in terms of what we do in public life. For example, the social constructivist theory try to emphasize that, although it's against the argument of the functional school of thought, which that leave more emphasis on the impact of institutions and structures within the state in ensuring public policy efficacy. In spite of that, even the system theory create an avenue for our social norms to influence the environmental factors that determine policy input and output. So, in view of this, the paper try to use the Yoruba aphorism, which is one of those elements of cultural norms, to see how can we use it as a mechanism to ensure mitigation against climate change in West Africa. And one of those things that the people are trying to focus on is, do we really have any aphorism that supports or encourage climate change mitigation as against the argument of the Western European writers who have oftentimes undermined African innovation in ensuring climate change mitigation? That's number one. Number two is like, if we have those aphorisms, then do we still believe in those aphorisms? And if we believe in them, what are the problems then restraining us from using them in trying to clamor or mitigate against climate change in Southwest Nigeria? So no, the paper which seeks to examine, because it's still it's an evolving paper. I'm still trying to complete the work, but I'm still hoping like scholars to contribute and add their own input to it, so just to enrich the quality of the work. The paper seeks to use mixed methods, then which will comprise of both qualitative and quantitative. For the qualitative, we are going to use selected Yoruba aphorisms that support climate change mitigation. We know we have so many aphorisms like that. I've gotten about 15 or 20 of them. One of them is one that said, Agbára ò jẹ́ kí agbára onílé ní onígbà fún, which means the owner of the house will not allow erosion to allow the erosion to at least mess him up. So, these are some of those examples of aphorism and we are going to select just to establish the fact that truly we Yorubas too, historically we have wise words that our forefathers philosophized, and then which can also be used to fight against climate change in this century. Now, the quantitative part of the paper will now try to interrogate the opinion of the people as to the extent at which they believe in the aphorisms, and then to what extent does it really influence their daily life, and how can we now use them as a way to mitigate against climate change. One of those areas which the work has really explored and identified is like, truly we have these aphorisms, but they are not documented. In fact, there are several aphorisms, like we just have to get through those aged ones just to get them. But they exist, but it is hard for us to get literatures to back it up. And that's exactly where the problem is, because some of our kids growing up today are not familiar nor exposed to those aphorisms. And that's one of the major gaps that has been preventing us from using this aphorism as a mechanism for fighting against climate change. So what the paper recommends is for us to try to work on getting more aphorisms, redocumenting them, and even using them in a way that it's so easy for our students to learn, either by music, either by animation, all these AI generated cartoons that we really lay emphasis on these aphorisms, and then why are people get used to it? Possibly they grow with it, and then those things now become part of them. Just like my friend I said, will tell you, like, if he eats his left leg on the rock, he believes something negative is coming, and no matter the speed at which he's running, he will make sure he uses his left hand to make sure he rebuke that thing. So if we have some aphorism like that too, that has really go into our system, and that has been part of our daily life, our people will grow up to be conscious of climate change.
So, Mr. Oshioluwa, you have just 4 minutes more. Can you hear me? So I don't know, how were you able to come up with that conclusion? So she did not say so. She said that I know even when women have the money, they don't want to spend money and share. That when they have the money, they don't want to spend.
Based on what I got from the
Oh, yeah, you asked.
okay. Okay, I'm coming. So concerning the self-confidence, she's not with me again.
She's
Okay. Concerning the self-confidence thing, it was what I gathered during the interview. I think I interviewed a chairman in the political party. So he said most women within their parties, you understand, they lack education, you understand, inability to express themselves. So, and it says that at times when they need women to maybe become deputy governor or something, they have to go to the academia to bring a woman that is not even in political parties to just to show, okay, the female gender, show that they are aligned with the gender, you understand. But the women within their parties that they don't have the necessary education or qualification to help them. You understand that? That was what I got. That was the things he was trying to explain as self-confidence. You understand? Ability to convey themselves. Okay, that English. Okay. What you are saying is most of women that are acting part of the majority of them are not educated. Yes. It affects their ability, their confidence, at level, the level. Exactly. Okay. So education. Like you don't tell everybody that don't work. Okay, no, it's education. In terms of education. So okay. Okay, please, Alice, are you there? Hello, Alice. Hello. Yeah, Alice, they have question for you. Okay, so you can ask. Yeah, question.
I might need our chair to repeat the question.
Okay. That's all those.
Technology. It's fantastic.
Okay, Alice, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so I had a couple of questions, super interesting presentation. The first question I had was about the stickiness of the effects for children. So just generally, like, are the attitudes that the boys and the girls, I forget what the age group was that you were talking about, how sticky are their beliefs? Do you see change? I don't know if you have some time dimension that you could study, but do you see the attitudes, towards the gender quotes as changing over time for the boys especially? So that's my first question. And then my second question was about if you had information about the attitudes of their caregivers, so their parents, and also about potential role model effects, if you can look at heterogeneity by the share of female teachers. So I don't know if you have some distribution of the, like, what percentage of the students in the classrooms have female teachers, but that would be very helpful to know, just thinking about how sticky these beliefs are, or these attitudes are, and then two, what are the potential outside influences, outside adult influences on especially the boys' attitudes towards gender quotas?
Those are excellent questions. So the age group, which I failed to note, was 5 to 16-year-olds. And we weren't able to measure change, but we can expect that there would be a lot of change. And maybe for both boys and girls, but boys more than girls. And that is a really good question for more research. We did measure the attitudes of caregivers. We did ask if their parents talk a lot about politics at home. We weren't able to get the gender of the teachers, but we have the gender of the person who administered the survey. So people have found like survey effects based on what the surveyor looks like. So a lot of those surveyors were women. There was one man, so we could check whether for that man who came and gave the survey out, whether the boys' responses were different. So we should do that. Thank you.
Okay, Alice, please, I also have a question for you. I was just concerned. You were carrying out a study in Nigeria, and you use Ogun State as a study. Yeah, don't case study. Do you think that you can actually use that to judge or to come up with your findings? This is not just Ogun State. I don't know.
So whether we can say this applies to all of Nigeria.
You said you use Ogun State, and you said you are looking at you are using Nigeria, and then you said you only carried out your research in the Ogun State. So can you come up with your findings? You just using Ogun State, like using Ogun State as a representative for Nigeria.
That's a really good question. Of course, one cannot verify if one doesn't do more research in other states, but we can compare like women's representation, whether Ogun State is representative of, in terms of women's representation in the state assembly, is that similar to other states? But the first presenter pointed out that it does vary. Some states have higher, some have no women. We can look at public opinion poll like the Afrobarometer. I don't know if people think those are reliable, but I mean, some studies have found that attitudes tend to be more conservative in the North. So I saw that Cecilia Valentine had a good chat comment about conducting the study in the North. But as someone who studied, I have studied Niger, which is mostly Muslim, and I found that many Muslims are not opposed to women being in positions of power because they have role models of women in Islam of being leaders. So I don't know that there would be a huge difference, but of course, people can disagree with me, and perhaps my co-author also disagrees with me. So yeah, I think more research should be done in other. I guess the question is whether we should not say Nigeria in our paper, but rather Ogun State. That's something for
exactly. It should be Ogun State instead of Nigeria.
It's not about
she can
Nigeria.
now carry out. Don't talk about Ogun State, and she will now probably tell us about using Ogun State is okay, or maybe selected, or something like that. So I think somebody else have a question for you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, please. There's no time.
My question is, did you actually consider the type of school? Is it a private school in Ogun State or public school? Why I'm asking this, are they exposed, the boys, are they exposed to any form of summit, boys gathering, where they are actually taught about gender identity, gender issues, and things like that? Then the finding, I have issue with the choice of word, the diction. I saw something like suppose. If the boys are already saying girls are supposed to lead, that is already like a problem. Are they not meant to lead? And then, did you check the problem in the country are serious? Bringing in women could help. So if there are no problems, women are not meant to be there.
Right.
Thank you.
Women only bring in the women if to solve the problems that men make, but the men, if they're doing fine, then we don't need women. Yeah, so it could be what the boys are thinking. So those are great comments. We didn't check whether the responses are very different between private schools and public schools. So we try to have even split between public and private. But the gender gap is the same, and the boys still support quotas pretty much the same in private schools versus public. But you're asking about the content of the education. And we weren't able to get, we did collect textbooks, but we weren't able to interview the teachers about like to what extent are they teaching about gender equality. And then I hear you about the supposed to versus meant. Maybe that's like the difference between the boys who talked about rights, like women have the right, versus they have to or need to. But thank you, those are all really good.
Okay, so any other question?
Yes.
Okay. Is it me or Alice? Okay, no problem.
I feel that we read that stakeholders, right? No, unfortunately, we are basically topics to address. We have formulated policies, we have to implement us, and then we have the external policy. Yeah, I think that that's the only very.
So sorry, I think the term handles that. The term, yeah, it talks about both. That's what I see. Yes, so it handles everything. Yes. That's what I'm saying, that the term captures everything. It looks at it from the two sides. Any other question, please? So, okay, you have a question for the last speaker. What is his name again?
Isholuwa or something.
For Isholuwa Olayinka. So he's not there. So
Yes,
I think thank you for coming. But if you still have any question, you can see us after the camera. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to our chair.
Thank you, Mr.